Hello and welcome to Abley FME Fireside, here with the digital engineering team of Hamish and Todd. Today we're going to talk about scripting FME Server installs. This is in response to a question on the forums about how we've done this, and Hamish has some experience with this last year and this year recently.
It's something that we've had up our sleeves for probably about 6 months now, and haven't really had much opportunity to use it really, because it's not that often that an FME server install comes around. But the two FME server installs that I've had to do personally myself in the last couple of months, or last 6 months, as you said, Chris, one was across 5 environments, so a dev, user acceptance testing, system integration testing, pre-prod and a prod environment. And the requirements from the client was that that was all sitting up in Azure on Azure virtual machines, was that for the disaster recovery policy that they needed to be able to be redeployed through a scripted interface. And part of that was installing and setting up FME Server, so there had to be a script that could run to do that. And the fortunate thing in that case was they were very basic server installs. There was using an Azure Postgres database, so that was really the only sort of non-standard installation part. And then the second installation was across 3 environments, a dev, a QA environment and a production environment. But in this case, the QA and the production environments were high availability failovers with 2 machines in each environment, each with their own dedicated engines, and then having the cores talking across those environments. So 2 different sort of setups, but both setups had a lot of duplication across them. And that sort of, at least to me, was a really good opportunity to do a scripted install, so we can ensure that each time we installed it on the respective environments, that the configurations were identical. And something that was really, really beneficial was the speed at which this was able to be done. So I will jump into the script in a moment, but if you've installed FME Server, you'll know that setting up HTTPS it's not complicated, but there's a couple of text files that you need to edit, you need to add some stuff, and it only takes 5-10 minutes if you know what you're doing. But if you've got it scripted, it took a second. It didn't take any time to basically go and make those changes, which when you're rolling it out to 5 environments, that all adds up, and that saves a lot of time in the long run.
I think probably one of you kind of alluded to it in terms of the client wanting something that could run up in an emergency. The emergency can also be that someone has left your organisation that did the install the last time, and whoever's coming along doesn't necessarily know. They might be able to read the setup instructions, but what the bit that was missed related to some firewall somewhere that you needed to change this setting, and you're setting up in a completely new environment, etc. So it kind of negates all those things having it scripted. Just in terms of, would you say that you would do this for just a standard single machine express install?
For an express install where it was using the inbuilt Postgres, probably not, simply because really that's just an exercise of clicking next.
Yep.
If you can click the next button, you can install it in that basic. But when we're dealing with big enterprise clients, they have a lot of their own requirements and their security requirements, things like non-standard ports, setting all of that up.
Yep.
That was another big sort of saving point. So just looping back to what Chris was saying, that this was all kicked off from a forum question from Bagashri Singh, asked, hey, need to install a FME Silent installation, and Red Geographics did point towards the silent installation documents, which is really what forms the basis of that script. So you've got the ability to extract those installation files, then things like your installer flags around whether you want a quiet installation and your log files, and then going through and setting up all your post-install tasks. So of course this is all well and good, having it documented, but it's still just a very high level. So I did share the script on the forums, and if you go and find that link page, you can see the details of that. But this is essentially the script. So much like any sort of process, you've got some variables that you need, because as you move this through environments, the location of the installation is going to change. The database host and the password, all of that's going to be different for all the environments. And not wanting to go too in depth into the logic, because that could be hours worth of time. Yeah. Basically, just I thought I'd just run through some of the things that this script actually does, and why it's doing those things, and how that saved a good portion of time. So, start off, you extract the installer. If you've ever installed FME, pretty sure even FME Desktop does it, the first step it does is extracts the installation files and then points it to the installer. So again, that's just a very straightforward set of calls. You then run into what is sort of the core of the installation step. And I know, Todd, before you were saying that in previous versions that some parameters installing FME Server you could actually only access through the command line installation.
Yep.
So this is where you can set your things like where it's installed to, what the username and the password are, and a lot of these aren't required for just a standard installation. So when you do your standard installation, your Express installation, you're not forced to specify a Windows user account or a service account to run FME Server. But of course, in these environments, there will be file shares that need to be accessed, different permission levels. So it was important that we were able to set those for the client. And then we sort of go through, and that's basically this bit of code here is all you need to actually install FME Server. The bulk of the logic, or the bulk of the script, is actually in configuring and doing the post-installation work.
Yep.
And you're nodding your head, Todd, because you know that exact... Yeah. I don't want to say the pain, but you know just how long some of that can take.
Well, I know from the perspective that depending on what the client has, or even what we have inside here, some of those things are specific to their environments of things that we need to change, such as, I know one that comes up for me quite a lot is the node host.
Oh, yeah.
Because it defaults to what you entered, but if your machine's not actually kind of called that, or there's firewalls and load balancers in place and stuff like that, that can have a whole bunch of complications. So adding and changing those configs to make it actually work for you and your client is can be painstaking. And I suppose, and this is another bit around having it set up in these scripts, remembering just making sure that you've actually done all those things.
Because it's very easy in the script to see, okay, it's run through this, and I've included logging in the script, so you can then view the log file and you can check exactly what it's done. And one of the things that really, I don't want to say it's a bane of my existence in installing FME servers, but is going through and resetting all the SMTP TDALs for all the publications and notifications, all those services. And of course, when you script it, you can automate all of that quite quickly. So I'll just bring the screen back. So what you're able to do is, by automating calls through to the REST API, you can get all your notifications. I always get notifications in Publishers around the wrong way. You can get all your notifications and basically find which ones are email types. So you can do all that programmatically, and then you can iterate through them and manually set, again, just invoking a web request to the appropriate, scroll up it so you can actually see, sending a request to the appropriate REST endpoint, and basically go through and within seconds update all of your SMTP details to send emails in various situations. And that probably saves 15, 20 minutes.
Especially when they change.
And all of this could also be done retroactively on an existing system.
Yep.
So we could take this and we could apply it across, say Abley's SMTP details changed. We could go and apply that across our environment. We can see exactly what we're changing, and it's repeatable and it's fast.
It's actually, this jumps to one of the things that I like to use subscribers for in terms of making sure that people are using subscribers rather than, or topics through to subscribers, rather than setting SMTP
Using
details or in automations.
Yeah.
Because having one location where it's all controlled is definitely my preference. So, knowing that topic is to that subscriber and being able to just update that subscriber and have it flow through every single process.
Definitely.
Is one of the big ones.
Definitely. And it's just those little things. So I know at the start I mentioned with setting HTTPS. So here is setting the HTTPS. There's 4 XMLs that you need to make changes to. 3 of being Tomcat around the configuration, and then you need to update your FME Server config text to say, hey, you can actually call yourself an HTTPS site rather than an HTTP site. So again, it's only 4 text files, but having the ability to then go and, find and replace strings like here. It's basically saying SSL on, change it to SSL off, going and setting all the correct configs. All of this takes seconds to run, and you can see exactly what you're doing. You can import things like your PFX passwords and your PFX locations, and it just happens straight away. And that saves so much time. It's
compared to following a list of instructions about go here, do this, change this, go here, do this step, change this.
Yes, and
you're saying you don't like my instructions.
and I will give Todd the credit that a lot of this has been built off of a document that he has been collating for 10 years.
10 years, yeah,
around, and some versions things get added.
Oh, I know.
Some versions things get removed because they've now been put through the UI or they're part of the installer workflow or new functionalities added.
It's much quicker these days than what it used to be, eh?
Yeah, I remember, I think the first version I installed was 2017 at Nectar. That took a long time. Granted, it was my first ever installation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for the dev environment for one of our clients for this, I think I installed FME Server 4 or 5 times in one day. And that was complete installation from nothing to HTTPS emails all set.
Yep.
And that was because I was able to do that because I had this script.
Yep.
And it meant that I could very rapidly change the script and notice, I didn't do that, or that's not quite working as expected. So I could go back, make changes to the script while I was making changes to the script, uninstall the installation I've just done, restart the machine, rerun the script. 10 minutes later, I'd have FME Server up and working, fully installed, fully configured.
Yep.
And I wouldn't have been able to do that. That would have been 5 days worth of work. Well, maybe not 5 days.
I was going to say, Hamish is obviously a bit slow.
but that would have been considerably more than 1 day's worth of work to iterate across it and restart 5 times.
Yep.
But yeah, that's been a real lifesaver, and it's a very valuable tool I have in my tool belt now for for installations.
I think one of the things for us anyway is having, that one client that says, I want this, and then you kind of get that, and then you go, well, actually, I've got a different client now, but I need to change some of these bits and pieces and add this bit and take away this bit, but it becomes that much easier. It's, in lots of ways, it's like the installation document that we've built up over 10 years.
You pick and choose what's appropriate for each client.
Correct. And actually just having that there makes life so much easier when you run across something, or you want to expand or understand how something works.
Definitely. So the script that I just showed there, that was the more or less the script that was used for the second client with the 3 environments and the high availability. But the first client, that was essentially the same logic but split out over 5 different scripts that did individual things, and one of them was actually to pull all the required configurations down from Azure Key Vault and some Azure services, because that was where the passwords and the configurations feature that are in respective environments was. So that had sort of a handler PowerShell script that would pull all that configuration down, then populate and pass those parameters through to the individual scripts and do the extract, then the install, then the post install, and it was all separated out into much more refined steps, and that was just part of that requirement. But now we've got all those little chunks that we can just pull out and put in where appropriate.
Yeah, you know what we're lacking here? Is that you didn't use FME to actually write it.
No, there was no FME used in this at all, other than installing FME.
Yeah.
And no, there was. I was going to say maybe there was some initial sort of finding stuff in text files, but that was just VS Code on Notepad++ and Control F. So that's sort of an overview of what we've got or what we've done to script some installs. Hopefully this will be a presentation topic over in Bonn as well, which I'll go into a bit more detail. So if you're heading over there, reach out and hopefully come along to my presentation on this topic. So that was the Abley Fireside team with Chris, Todd and myself, Hamish, and we hope you learned something today.